Well, good afternoon. Good evening, good afternoon. Depends on which time zone you're in. I'm Jonathan Rendy, our SVP of Products at PagerDuty, and I'm honored and excited to host this panel today with 3 partners, customers, and colleagues in the industry, where we're going to talk about automation and AI and its use in an organization. So before we get started, maybe it'd make sense to do quick introductions.
Yep, sure. Hi, y'all. I'm Dave Justice, VP of Engineering at Sunrun, which is America's largest residential solar company.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Dan Gray. I'm the Vice President and Deputy CIO of DXC Technology, which is a large global technology services provider.
Hi, it's Yasin Qureshi here, Head of Technology for TUI, the world's largest travel tourism organization.
Great. Well, welcome. I know we've flown from all over to get here. So before we get into AI and automation, kind of curious, given the economic climate, things have changed a lot over the last year, over the last even 6 months, where budgets are getting centralized, tightening. I guess one of the kind of balance questions that goes on in every organization, is it more about cost containment, or is it more about innovation? So just curious, Dave, starting with you.
Sure.
Are you doing one or the other focused on with goals for the team, or balancing both?
No, we're trying to have our cake and eat it too, as I think what every organization is trying to do. But yeah, I mean, when I came into Sunrun about a year and a half ago, we were starting a very large digital transformation project, right? And that's not a thing that you stop just because things have gotten a little bit more tight from an economic perspective. But that being said, there's still a conscious mindset toward how do we drive efficiency where we can. And I think the real question is, how do you enable, at least my engineers and my team, to focus on high value things rather than things that we can just automate away, or annoy developers who are like, oh, I don't have to do this like really plumbing thing. And so that's really what we've been focusing on, is how do we drive innovation by freeing up our engineers to focus on high value activities.
Great. So efficiency. Cost containment.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Yeah, well, for me, it is about how we can, exactly what Dave said about the distribution of work. How can we generate as much value as possible, but while still, making the existing operations as efficient as possible, and not forgetting doing everything in a secure, resilient way. Those, I think, are the top 3 things on my mind, which is maximize value, continue to optimize the existing operations, but doing everything in a secure and resilient way.
Makes sense.
So I think from a travel organization, we've been impacted severely during the downtime. Our business was completely shut down. And we are quite focused on efficiency, resiliency, and the biggest priority we have actually is growth. So we have a huge ambition to create market share. So from a business perspective, the expectation is that we'll grow our customer base, which is currently approximately about over 20 million customers a year that we take on holiday, to over 30 to 40 million customers. So the products that we provide are under the umbrella of travel and tourism. We own our own planes, we own our own hotels, we own cruise ships, and we provide the end-to-end holiday experience for our customers. And we work as a base from Europe, but we have over 180 destinations across the world that we go to. And we are improving market share in customer growth, and also market share in terms of the markets that we're in. So we're moving into new countries and providing our services from there.
So a lot of cost containment and growth, innovation, moving into new regions, et cetera. We have kind of a pretty diverse set of organizations, businesses, both enterprise and consumer. There's always the common thread is a never-ending pressure to innovate, to drive more velocity, to drive more innovation out of the teams. What comes to mind is kind of a question around what strategies are your teams using when you do have cost measures to still innovate, to still drive more. And maybe Yasin, I think everybody can relate to the travel industry, having gotten here at different times today. So
That's right.
How are you dealing with this?
Yeah, so we started our transformation journey about 7 years ago. And we had a strategy of ABCDS. A was APIs, make sure that everything that we produce is event-driven. B was big data. We have a huge customer base and huge amount of data that we collect, and we want to be able to use that to the advantage of providing better quality holidays and experiences for our customers. C was moving to the cloud space, so we chose AWS as our partner, so we moved everything into the cloud. D was DevOps, so more focused at how do we actually work as a team. We moved away from project delivery to product delivery, so we made 2 pizza-sized teams. And S is security, which is the first principle. We care about the service that we provide, and we need to make sure that is secure. And that journey started, as I said, 7 years ago, and we are innovating at a rapid pace. So we've had the ability to lay the foundations of all those strategic goals, and we're constantly reviewing those and making sure that we are moving in the right direction. And the good thing is that the foundations that we've laid have actually helped us accelerate and have the confidence to actually grow as a business.
That's very appropriate for these times. I know it takes also not only kind of that balancing act, but also a level of autonomy of the teams to be able to move, which kind of leads me to a follow-up that to have some of the innovation, to have some of the growth, you do have to have a culture of kind of ownership, of autonomy in the organization. I guess, how do you make sure that you have that ownership in the organization?
Yeah, so, really, really good question. So what we've done with DXC is we've aligned at the very, so outside of the technology group, we've aligned by our critical business process or value streams to get stakeholder involvement from not just the technology leaders, but more importantly, the business function leaders. And that allows us to really focus on getting that agility, but then also making sure that our roadmaps are aligned to those priorities. We then, similar to Yassine, have moved from a project to a product delivery model, whereby we've shrunk the teams into more services focused on delivering value to that particular value stream versus the very large shared pool teams that we've had in the past. So those are some of the strategies that we've taken.
Yeah, I think we've done similar. I mean, we're largely project-driven historically, moved to product mindset, followed more domain-driven architecture where there's direct accountability and ownership of key business functions, and then also having like trust and partnership with business units. But I think part of it too has really come around us allowing space for experimentation within the team, right? Because highly efficient systems are not resilient systems, and so we want to allow people to sort of do moonshots sometimes, try things out, and see, because that's really where you get like leapfrogged efficiency and actually drive meaningful value rather than just maximizing to the local optima.
So you brought up efficiency, and we have innovation, efficiencies, again, kind of the balance of the two. I always think it's a bit of a struggle to get efficiency at scale, to scale that. And that takes some level of kind of governance across the board, some level of following consistent practices or processes, but you don't want to take the autonomy out of individuals, individual teams. So I guess to kind of achieve some of those efficiencies, just curious, Dave, what you do at Sunrun to kind of have a more consistent scaled approach with some of those.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all tied to incentives, right? If you want to get people to behave in specific ways, you incentivize appropriately, right? I think everyone can relate to that. And so, it's all about defining key KPIs and metrics that we hold the teams accountable to, and then we're a little bit more fuzzy on the how you necessarily deliver that. Obviously, we have best practices, North Star architectures, all that stuff, but we give the autonomy. And so we look at things like, are you meeting whatever your domain's business objectives are? What's your time to market? How many errors do you have? How often are you having production outage instances? What's your MTR? But by creating these metrics and holding teams cross-accountable and cross-sharing those, it then drives some of that accountability to move efficiency. And it cost, obviously, is one of those metrics, but it shouldn't be the only metric.
And how frequently do you set that? Is that quarterly, annual, monthly?
Yeah, we do quarterly reviews. So we set metrics basically every quarter across, every team is basically broken out between human metrics, like team retention, happiness, those kinds of things, culture fit, business objectives, so are you driving whatever your domain's business function is, and then more operational things, cost efficiency, time to resolution, all that. And we basically set that every quarter, and then we reevaluate, and then we readdress. And then we also cross-share that across teams, so each team can see, and then share what's working or what's, you got your MTA way down, MTR, how did you do that, right? And then that provides that culture of innovation and growth.
So that's Sunrun's approach. Any others when it comes to kind of scaling?
Yeah, so just to give an idea of our scale, so DXC Technology, we're present in over 70 countries. We have 130,000 employees. We have some of the largest customers in the world that we're delivering mission-critical services to. And what I found in the past is when people strive for efficiency, they tend to really go for a totally horizontal shared service model and often over-rotate in that direction. And you end up with a very diluted set of services with a real low sense of purpose. In fact, I've got some anecdotes where I've been talking to some members of the team, maybe who have worked on a server, and they don't really understand the purpose of the system running on that infrastructure because they're so highly leveraged. So what we did, because efficiency isn't just about cost, it's about delivering the value for that lowest cost. So again, going back to what I said before around that operating model, and creating strong service-oriented teams with a strong sense of purpose who can then deliver that value is how we have chosen to scale, and it's been extremely effective for us.
So I'm curious, Dan, in an organization where you have autonomy, you have a service ownership kind of model, services are only getting more complicated, greater dependencies, greater complexity. It's not a question of when or if something will go wrong, it's more kind of an issue of when it will happen. And when that happens, you want kind of the right team to step forward and the other teams to take a step back. How do you deal with that? What do you put in place in your organization?
So the service owner is very aware of that they own the quality of service for that particular service unit of measure. But we do have some, we have a reliability engineering team, and we have some shared service teams who work with those service teams to implement design for operations, who talk about the communication strategy, understand, stakeholder templates, ensuring that the right people are notified. Because I think that's the key thing. When something does break, which inevitably it does, that the communication is very clear, crisp, timely, and then the service is back up and running as quickly as possible, ideally before there's any real impact. Because what we do is we try and tune our measures, our SLOs to the point where it's a proactive event versus a business impacting incident. So that's some of the techniques that we use.
So I think from our perspective, we run mission critical services. And what we really strive for is predictability and consistency. So whenever there is a service impacting incident, the group of people who are responsible for resolving the issue are fully aware of what processes and procedures to follow. So we've got a single focal point with a defined process for service management. So how do we manage incidents? How do we manage change? And how do we manage disruptions to service which are impacting not only customer experience, but potentially revenue as well? So we have a very clearly defined process for managing that. And we use PagerDuty as the single pane of glass for giving us that visibility and autonomy and control to a very large set of engineers. So we have over 3,000 engineers in IT delivering our product services, and we've completely decentralized. We do not have central teams managing issues. It's all based on self-service, and it's all based on getting a notification of events to the right person at the right time, and being able to coordinate those incidents within the tool set itself.
Yeah, we're pretty much the same way. I think we've gone, like, we do residential solar, and so for those who aren't aware, a lot of that is door knockers going into people's houses, which I know for this audience, that's kind of a terrifying thought of a bunch of people showing up at your door and trying to get into your house.
I've answered that doorbell twice.
Yeah.
In 2 places I use Sunrun, so thank you.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. No, glad to hear
My
it.
power bills are much lower now.
That's the goal. That's our objective. But to that point, you have people in person interacting with each other. So when there's an outage, like, that's real awkward for the sales rep, because you're literally in somebody's living room and you're just like, hey, like trying to tap dance around there's an outage. And so what we've done is, similar to you, we have a very distributed model, set processes, but we've also given power to our end users to be able to set alerts and notifications through PagerDuty. And that's really accelerated our ability to, figure out when something's gone wrong and get it up, because there's n number of permutations of how something can break within our system.
So I'm curious, there's the service model, there's more centralized models that maybe many of your organizations have and use today. More often than not, I'm starting to see a blend of the two models come together. So I'm just curious, when issues are flowing into your organization, interruptions, disruptions, unplanned events, do you still have the notion of kind of an L1 or a network operations center that, while they're not, maybe managing the issue from beginning to end, they are helping kind of route the issue, add in the automation, add in the efficiency? How do you blend the two models together today? Maybe, Yasin, I'll start with you.
So we've converted everything to a product now. So network services are provided as a product, and they're dealt with as a product. So all the philosophy of DevOps and Agile and automation, they're all built into the same construct. And we also have incident command teams. So we do have teams readily available to coordinate major incidents, because that's very much required as a service. And to ensure that we get that consistency of decision making, we need a single owner for major incidents, and that's where the incident command team play a big role.
Dan, how about?
Yeah, so we also have a centralized incident command team, which is just essential, especially in those mission-critical events. We are still, on that journey. We still have an L1 service team, but that is increasingly shrinking, and we're actually using the service structure as a bit of a career path for that L1 team as we convert more of our services into fully self-service products. It allows that team to move. So I talked before about the distribution of work, and what I mean by that is just giving people the ability to work on more feature enhancement type work and new initiatives versus a lot of the more toil sort of operational work. And that's been really successful for us in terms of just retaining that talent and giving people a sort of line out of that, the bad old days of operations, as we all remember.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, we're exactly the same. We've seen the same thing. We have tier 1 support, like support desk that supports everybody. Tier 2, and then goes to the software engineers. But we've now turned that into a career path suggestion. And honestly, some of the best engineers come out of those pathways, which is really nice.
How aggressive, or I guess how clear are you trying to automate L1, like fully automate it away, or do you always have kind of maybe the approach of there'll be a small team in place, it'll never be fully automated? I'm just curious.
So we don't have a target set to have 0, but we do have targets in terms of reducing and automating. We do ongoing toil analysis of manual repetitive work that is flowing into the L1s, and we automate those flows, and those are then handed over to the service teams to run. We haven't considered a to zero operation, L1 operations model, but we have initiatives that are running to shrink that, and we see that as really another value lever, because we're then creating new features that are then helping our business grow.
So we've got a maturity model that we've created, which has the ambition of no ops. We realize that it's very difficult in many situations to actually achieve that in reality. But what we are promoting is that the product team has to take ownership of what they build. If they build poor quality, they're responsible for fixing it. And to help them, we provide guidance on what is the best thing to do and how to do it. So before you run something into a production environment, do you actually have a run book? Do you have some checks that you've done to make sure that you've actually delivered a good service into a production environment? So it's not just the code is working, it's about is it secure? Does it meet our compliance standards and security standards as well?
To be provocative, I would argue that you would never want zero at tier 1 or at that level of support, because I think you have to worry about employee experience too, right? There's a lot of proof that shows that employees are happy, customers are more happy, and it drives business value. And just like anybody, when you talk to an automated system, when it works, it's awesome, but some doesn't work, right? Sometimes I was just arguing with Delta today about something. I was trying to get something upgraded. I was like, talk to a representative. And so you want that interaction. And so what I think, for me at least, what it comes down to is how can we use automation to get rid of the, for lack of a better word, BS stuff that you can't automate away, and then let your teams focus on high value things that drive that employee satisfaction, that general satisfaction.
We talk a lot about the quality of life of the people who are doing in that operations working, improving that quality. That's really important to us. So I totally agree with that.
Not human ops, but humane.
Yeah,
ops.
humane
ops. Yeah. So we've talked about scale, efficiency at scale. We've talked a little bit about automation. Let's switch gears and talk a little bit about AI. Yasin, in your organization, how are you thinking in the travel industry? How are you using AI today?
I think we've embraced the notion of AI quite heavily in our organization, and we're very keen to see whether we can actually create new models of how we can offer travel, hospitality, and tourism from an industry perspective, and we want to lead in that space. We've been using machine learning for many, many years. So one good example is how we price our holidays. We've used machine learning tools to actually help us balance between the demand and the supply that we have, and we do it real time. And the way we build our products, it's almost in near real time, where a packaged holiday, which includes a flight, hotel, holiday attractions and experiences, and also transfer from airport to destination and anything additional, it's actually built in real time. So we are providing a dynamic inventory management system. And automation of that is very, very critical. So we've got several touch points where we have been using machine learning quite extensively over the years to actually evaluate patterns and give us predictions of what is the best case that we can actually achieve this in. Another good example is in our flights. So we have to make sure that we have the right amount of fuel to get to the destination. And
always a good thing.
Always a good thing, yes.
Very important.
And from a safety perspective, we also have a requirement to have additional fuel in case there is turbulence or any other situation that requires extra time in the air. So we're also conscious that from a travel industry perspective, fuel is the most expensive element of the holiday expense. And on top of that, there is a sustainability issue as well in terms of how much fuel we consume. And we've applied machine learning algorithms to actually calculate what is the best rate of fuel that we actually can put on a plane in a safe manner. And we always rely on the pilot to make the final decision. And we've actually improved the efficiency of the fueling by at least 5 to 10% after we applied the machine learning algorithms.
So more of the assisting in the decision-making at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
How about at Sunrun?
Yeah, so I mean, similarly, we use AI and machine learning and statistics and all that fun stuff kind of all throughout the process. I would say we kind of chunk it into 3 major buckets. The first is sort of that like business intelligence side of the house, right? Where it's, hey, how do we get smarter about the hardware that we're picking, right? Because we don't make our own hardware for any of this stuff, so we have to figure out like what's going to fail when it rains versus what's going to work well in a desert versus what's like, and so AI and machine learning is very good at those kinds of business intelligence, which then inform our business making decisions. 2 is from a consumer experience perspective, and so a really good example is we have an older fleet for a number of our customers, and we needed a way to provide.
This is on the field service.
It's actually just in the customer app, and so we needed a way to provide near real-time data to customers because like you look at your app and you're like, okay, this is 2-day-old data because that's the refresh rate that particular inverter provides us data. We were able to use AI to predict at a very, very high accuracy what the likely production was and then present that as an estimated production. And people were like ecstatic for that because they could still see that their system was working. And then that reduced call volumes, or hopefully reduces, we just launched it, but hopefully reduces call volumes into our call center to be like, hey, is my system working? Like, because I don't see data from yesterday, right? And so we look at it from the consumer experience side. And now, with generative AI and LLMs and all that fun stuff, we are looking at how can we do more intelligent assistance, how can we do more like focused chatbots, again, that's around reducing call center volume of repeatable issues.
I love that app, by the way. I love seeing how many kilowatts were created each day.
It's fun. It's really cool when you can look at the entire fleet and then you're like, oh, it was raining in North Carolina, or like in Carolinas, and you see like the production go down. But anyways.
How about?
Yeah, so as a technology services company, we have AI built into all of our offering teams. So whether it be analytics and engineering, modern workplace, cloud, security, it's embedded in all of our sort of customer-facing offerings. Actually, just a plug, if you go over to the Expo Center, we have a Ferrari racing car in our booth, and we're doing some pretty cool work with Ferrari on like bringing in the IoT sensors and using that data for insight. So some really cool stuff in the client-facing side. From an internal IT side, we use AI heavily in our device management for our PC fleet. So as I said, we have 130,000 employees. In 2019, we took the decision to go virtual first. So pretty much all of those employees are working from home, and we have no goals to change that. So we have to come up with ways to manage that, and that's got a large capital expense, which I'm sure you can figure out. So we've done a lot in terms of maximizing the performance of those devices, not just replacing them after a certain given time. So we've seen real benefits there. We've done a lot of things in the intelligent assistant for support services, for HR, payroll, IT support. And then from an operations point of view, we've heavily invested in an AI-driven operations stack, of which PagerDuty is part of. And as we've already talked, we're seeing good operational efficiencies from that.
So the last 3-6 months have been, the amount of innovation with all the LLMs that have come out and with generative AI have really changed a lot. Changed maybe many organizations' perception of what they can do, what could you do. On top of, I think, Yasin, you were saying kind of the data science and machine learning has been going on for many years, same as at PagerDuty. I'm curious how you view some of the new generative advances versus existing data science and machine learning, and do you view them as different in your organization? Or they run differently, or basically just applying one on top of the other? I'm curious.
Yeah, so I think there's a huge opportunity that we see with the advances in generative AI. That there are possibilities which make it a lot easier to connect the human to the machine and have a natural language conversation with the machine where you cannot tell whether it's the machine or a human that you're actually talking to. And we are, I've got a really good analogy where we talk about AI and Gen AI walk into a bar, and Gen AI predicted what cocktail drinks to have, and Gen AI actually produced the next cocktail drinks that you need to have. And the caution for us is that you need to be careful about the first sip that you have on that drink from Gen AI, because you're not sure what you're going to get. So from a concern perspective, we are a customer-driven organization, and we have to ensure that we build trust with the services that we provide. So for us, it's very important to be conscious about the data that we use, the security that we embed within the processes itself, and making sure that we actually can trust the answers that come out from the tool itself. So from our perspective, we've created a very clear strategy of how we are going to use Gen AI in our organization. We are very ambitious about exploiting the technology and making the best use of it, but we need to be very careful about the safety concerns with the technology as well.
So to that point, are you today applying any of the generative AI to the consumer side, to the customer experience at all, or not yet?
Yes. We've categorized it into a couple of buckets. One is the front office, which is customer facing, and how do we improve processes and engagement and customer experience. The second one is the back office. How do we improve the employee experience and also how efficient it is in terms of the processes that we manage. And the third bucket is really the difficult one, which is the game changer. How do we see the travel industry and how can we use the technology to transform the services that we provide? So that's the core element of it in terms of the real competitive advantage that we can gain from the service. So at the front office, one example is with the call center. We get millions and millions of emails on a monthly basis, and agents look at those emails and respond to each customer. And it usually takes about 3 or 4 minutes to actually respond with an answer. We've applied the Gen AI to actually analyze the text, read the sentiment and the context of what the customer is asking, and respond within 3 seconds. So we've reduced drastically the amount of time the contact center has with a customer and being able to give a good response. At the moment, we're very careful. We don't just automatically send those responses to the customer. The contact center per agent will actually review that and send it across.
Yeah, and I think you hit a good point, right? Which is like whenever you're deploying, and when I've deployed AI systems before, it's the same thing. Test it with humans first, and control what's the output. Make sure it works, make sure it's predictable, and then you deliver it to the customer, because it only takes one wrong instance, and then you have a disaster on your hands.
Yeah. So one of the concerns is it going to beautifully tell a lie in a very grammatical, correct fashion. The other thing is just to make sure that it's not abusive as well, because it can result in a negative experience for the customer. On the back office side, we're actually looking at content generation. So we have thousands of hotel combinations available, and we have different markets, and we have different sentiments in terms of which market requires what type of language to describe the hotel facility. So we're using Gen AI in a production environment at the moment to create that content for us. From an ethical perspective, we've also made a decision. We will not generate images for hotels through Gen AI, because that's not a true representation of what that property is. So we do not want to mislead our customers into promising something that in reality doesn't exist.
Is that something that's stated up front?
It's a clear principle.
I know you're the moderator, but I actually have a question off that.
Yeah, sure.
Do you guys have like an ethical AI committee or anything like that where you actually, okay.
Yeah, so we've actually created an AI lab community. So we have a single owner responsible for the principles, the strategies, and the policy. And one of the key aspects that we're focused on at the moment is upskilling our organization. It's not an IT problem that we need to solve. It's a business challenge as well. So it's not something that the IT department can say, great ideas, we will go and solve these 20 different possibilities that we have. What we are creating is a funnel. So a playground where we have a platform which is safe for everyone to play in. So we do not restrict any use of Gen AI at all in our organization, but we provide guardrails. And security always comes first. We will protect customer data. We do not allow customer data to go into the public forum. And we also are incubating at least 20 projects at the moment, which are in the scale of the very easy ones where you can make a huge impact immediately. So one example is something that we deployed only a few weeks ago is in Microsoft 365. We've got a bot which will listen in on the conversations we have in the meetings and will create the agenda action items, an overview of and a summary of what we actually spoke about. Now that from a productivity perspective is immense because usually it takes me 20 to 30 minutes to write up a summary and actions. This is now done automatically for us. And it's a trust that we build over time that allows us to gain that confidence and exploit the technology. The other part that we've really exploited is the knowledge base that we have. So we use Confluence as our knowledge base across IT. We share all information, but over a period of time, it becomes very difficult to find the information is somewhere, but you can't actually pinpoint which page or which shared location it's in. We use the Gen AI models now to actually allow us to just chat to say, I'm looking for this information, where can I find it? And it actually gives us the information instantaneously.
Yeah, that's amazing.
We're using Gen AI in similar ways. We're doing release note management, so it's like we ship stuff like hourly, and so we want to send a recap to our senior leadership, like here's all the stuff that went to market, right? But capturing 8,000 PRs and all the things that are associated with that is not digestible, so we've used Gen AI to turn that into like common people speak of what actually went to market and then review that, saving like me and my team hours of work of like coalescing all that and making reports. And similarly, we've been looking at it, and it's sort of related to the PagerDuty space. Runbook automation in certain regards too, like getting out incident information to be like, oh, I have this issue in production. What was the solution? And I was like, oh, last time it was you kicked this ECS instance, and then that solved the problem. And it's like, cool, great, I know to do that, rather than spending the time to triage and figure out where that Confluence article is. Or whatnot.
The summarization, the reporting, the generation can be a powerful efficiency gain. I'm curious at DXC.
Yeah. So first of all, I think, as we've all said, we've been using AI for years, machine learning. Well, I think one of the great things about this generative AI, surge has been just the awareness for AI across the, everywhere, but certainly across our company. People who previously weren't talking about AI or there's a thirst for how can they use AI in their project with their client, et cetera. So one of the first things that we did, similar to what was already discussed, is we set up an office of AI with ethics, legal, strong governance procedures around it, technology presented, and any sort of client-facing use case needs to be suggested and put forward to be reviewed to ensure that it's ethical and it's responsible. But we don't restrict. We just have strong policies in terms of which tools should be used. We're providing alternatives to some of the more publicly available tools, which are ring fenced. It's just within our enterprise, and we are seeing huge value. Similarly, so one of our major use cases is we get a lot of requests from clients or potential clients for work, and we have to turn those around, RFPs, et cetera. We have a huge wealth of knowledge. We have, examples of work that we've done in the past which has went well, maybe that hasn't went so well, and understanding those use cases and bringing them all together is hugely valuable. So especially, again, at our scale, in the past we've had a lot of local discoveries maybe in a region or in an industry, but now we can make that global knowledge, and that is truly powerful. But again, it all has to be underpinned by those strong governance principles.
Yeah, it's funny. We basically had the same thing where it was. My background's mathematics, pure science, and AI stuff, and so I was like the nerdy guy that was like doing equations, and everyone was like, "What are they doing?" And then all of a sudden it became like CMOs and CEOs.
Yeah,
like everybody
exactly.
was like, generative is going to solve all of the world's problems. It's going to be amazing, and world hunger is going to end. And it was really nice because there was excitement about it and understanding and desire to do that stuff. But at the same time, then what happened was everybody everywhere was trying to do AI stuff.
Yeah.
And we were like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, that's not a successful measure. So similarly, we had to create an AI group that was, is responsible and tasked for how do we, largely deploy AI within our system, within our organization, and to drive efficiency, to drive some of these things that we've talked about. But that's a short-lived group. Like everyone knows that that's going to exist 2-3 years, and then it'll get weaved back into the fabric, and then it just becomes a thing that every team does.
Yeah, I think putting together those multi-layer training curriculums is really important as well, because just a simple thing. When we first mentioned hallucination, people are like, what is that? Like, this is a computer program. How can it give you a different output, to the same question? So that level of education is really important at different levels of the organization, from stakeholders down.
I'm curious.
Just by having 3,000 engineers who have access to this technology, you can easily duplicate the effort for solving the same problem. So what we've ensured is we created visibility in a single community group. Everyone has access to what are the key things that individuals are working on, sharing the experience as well of the experiments that are being done.
That kind of led to one of the questions I was going to ask, which is, at PagerDuty, we've had also machine learning has been a team and a project that we've been working on for 6+ years now. Generative AI started with a SWAT group, but now it's a part of every team is investigating what can they do, whether it's summarizing, whether it's a capability that could be on the roadmap in the future. I'm curious, when you think about not only the data science and the machine learning that's been going on for some time, but also the generative AI, are there any implications to kind of the structure of your teams? Dave?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, we did create an AI group that sits sort of independently to drive a lot of that. But I think to your point, at the end of the day, it's going to start weaving back into the teams. And so it really kind of goes back to your original questions that you're asking. In how do we set teams up to be successful and to have accountability and to drive these sort of efficiency goals, but then also have the autonomy to be able to experiment and understand, right? And I think when you do that, and you set that up right, the rest of it kind of follows and flows in suit.
Yeah, I think it's important not to get distracted just from because it's a cool technology, right? I mean, I think there will be new sort of problem sets that we can maybe discover to solve, but what I keep saying to my team is we have a lot of problems we already want to solve on the backlog. How can generative AI accelerate that? So I think that service structure then becomes even more important, because they already have a backlog of things that need to be solved. They have a roadmap. How can generative AI, accelerate the value of that delivery? We have, and I think this is again more of a temporary thing, we have consolidated data, AI, and automation teams together more as a platform organization to provide and enable the service teams on top of that. So that is an organizational change we've made in addition to the formation of this governance structure as well.
Great.
I think in the short term, it's going to really, if used the right way, create great efficiencies for our engineers and in terms of where they spend their time. There's also an opportunity that we see in terms of creating a new product or entering a new market or having a new proposition, doing things differently. And also, it is going to improve overall processes in terms of operations that we deliver for our customers and our employees as well. So I think it will be disruptive. Short term, definitely, in terms of a positive. In the long term, we just don't know how far disruptive it will be. But there was a question asked, will a Gen AI replace humans eventually? And the answer is no. I think humans will use AI to augment their experiences even more. The ones who choose not to use AI will be replaced.
It's always interesting whenever these disruptions come along. There's a level of kind of FUD that's put out there, but at some point, it usually helps to kind of rising tide raise all boats. So, wanted to open it up for questions from the audience. If you have any, yes, in the back.